Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Dr. Neha. Finally, after the official launch of the WinNet series for the NTA UGC NET examination, December 2026, I am here with the curtain raiser. In our previous videos, exclusively for December 2026 examination, we have introduced you with a series WinNet, and secondly we have introduced you with a list of books that should be there with you as you prepare for this examination. So here I am to begin the series WinNet 2026. आज हम स्टार्ट करने वाले हैं एंड हमारा फर्स्ट लेक्चर जो होगा दैट विल बी ऑन द बिगिनिंग ऑफ इंग्लिश लिटरेचर. सी, in our NTA UGC NET examination, qualifying examination for the post of assistant professor, what becomes important? Knowledge, conceptual, our roots, our core knowledge, and that core knowledge comes from the history. So we are officially beginning our history of English literature series in the very first series because grounding is important. So today we are going to ground the study through the Anglo-Saxon period or the Old English period of English literature. First thing first, whenever you start your preparation, it is always important to foreground the study. And in order to foreground the study, you cannot straight away jump to William Shakespeare or to Christopher Marlowe or for that matter Dryden and Pope. You need to have the chronological understanding. Keyword chronology. In the today's series of examination, आज के हम बात करते हैं तो सबसे ज्यादा हमारे नेट के एग्जाम में इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाती है क्रोनोलॉजी, और वो क्रोनोलॉजी हमें मिलती है अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ हिस्ट्री से. इफ वी हैव गुड अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ हिस्ट्री ऑफ इंग्लिश लिटरेचर, not only our answers but our guesses will also not go wrong, because we will get to know this thing that this is essentially the bird eye view of history. That first we have the Anglo-Saxon age, and after Anglo-Saxon age we have the Anglo-Normans, and then we have Middle English period. After Middle English period we have the Age of Revival, and after Age of Revival we have our famous Renaissance, then Restoration, then Neoclassical, and after Neoclassical age we have the Puritan age, and after Puritan age we have the Romantic age. After Romantic we have the Victorian age, and after Victorian we have the Modern age, and after Modern age we have the Postmodern age. Entering the world literature, entering the contemporary literature post World War II. So that's the chronology you must know with all its diverse name. But let us raise the curtain today and start with the Old English period for what you are here for. So this is going to be my very first lecture for the WinNet 2026 series. So Old English period is the very first defining age of English literature. See, my dear students, you need to be very much clear about the fact that earlier literature had been in oral form. So whatsoever was transferred in the form that you could call literature was transferred from the word of mouth. It was only in the 12th or the 13th century that these oral works were conjectured works, were converted into extant works, into the exact works, into the exact known works, that they belong to the Old English period. So what did I say? There was no printing press, but still preservation was kept from oral method and then to the written method. Presumably what sort of written forms were used during that time. First thing. Second thing, all the works, all the names of the authors which we will study in this age are essentially conjectured. Just mark this word conjectured, because this word conjectured means that all is in doubt, nothing to be sure of. We always will see that C symbol in front of the year in which that work was published, because the author had been anonymous and the written and the publication date is also anonymous. So for that matter, whatever we are going to study in the Old English period will primarily be conjecture. Third thing, in Old English period, poetry comes first. Why poetry comes first? Because poetry, rhythm, alliteration, form of saying something in poetry was always there. Why? Because every chieftain had its own bard, scope or gleemen by their side in order to sing them of their rivalry, in order to sing them of their chivalry, in order to sing them, in order to praise the king, the chieftain. One scope, bard or gleeman was also always there. So whatsoever they sang became the song of the king, and it was forward orally. So poetry naturally came first in the literary understanding of the age. But first of all, in understanding literature, you need to understand the social, political, historical background. So I will give you little more understanding of the Old English period, how life had been there, how people were there, and what kind of dialects and the development of language was there during that time. But before I start, I request you people to please do like this video and comment your remarks on this video, because that really keeps us going. That this series, WinNet series, is exclusively for you people, for the December aspirants of this eligibility test. So my dear students, what all I am asking from you is just your like, just your comment. In order, if you wish to comment on something you want us to improvise on, you are most welcome. And if you really like the way, if you are in doubt that this topic I want to study more with much more seriousness, comment section is welcome. You can let us know in the comment section below what all you desire from us. We are essentially students teacher only. So first thing first, that's what I have told you. Literature of extemporary kind was composed long before earliest written records. Even before the records of the written literature were found, literature was already there. Literature was already being composed there, sort of compositions that I have told you. Each chieftain had its own bard, scope and gleemen who praised them of their chivalry. हर chieftain के पास, हर ट्राइब के chieftain के पास अपना एक बार्ड होता था, पोएट होता था, स्कोप होता था, जो उन्हें प्रेज करने के लिए सॉन्ग्स को सिंग करता था. तो ये एक सॉर्ट ऑफ अर्ली पोएटिकल कॉम्पोजिशन है. बट असेंशियली जो हमारी लिटरेचर है 5th सेंचुरी से स्टार्ट होती है, बिकॉज जो सेटलमेंट हुई इंग्लिश ट्राइब्स की, एंगल्स, सेक्शंस एंड जूट्स, वो लेट 5th सेंचुरी में हुई है. अर्लियर रोमन्स वर देयर. सो इन 410 रोमन्स डिपार्टेड एंड ब्रिटिश पॉपुलेशन वाज लेफ्ट ओपन टू इन्वेडर्स. सो मेनी tribes like angels, sections and jutes came and left their old seats in the Denmark of Pennsylvania, and they came to England and sought land there, sought seats there, and they settled down there by the end of the 5th century only. So majorly 3 tribes are there that comprises of Angles, Saxons and Jutes. These are the old Germanic tribes that came from Denmark, and from Denmark they settled in the English Isle. Once Roman people left, And after Roman people left, these tribes settled there and thus became English tribes. Angels, Saxons and Jutes. Yes, there are other ones also like Danes, like Scandinavians. So, English tribes essentially came as mercenaries to help defense against Picts and Scots. So, all about battles there, all about invasion and invaders. Earlier form of social, historical, political background comprises of the fact that there was this constant shifting of the tribe. There was no place that you could call your own. Even the English tribes, the Angels tribe came from somewhere else as a mercenary to defense against Picts and Scots, and as a result of which it settled only in the last quarter of the 5th century. So it was only in the last quarter of 5th century that permanent settlement of tribes went in the English Isle, and those people today are known as English people. Earlier they were just tribes. Now, after the permanent settlement in the last quarter of the 5th century, what kind of people they were? They were pagan people. They followed pagan religion. What is pagan religion? When when you consider nature as father or mother, when you see earth as mother, when you see sun as father, when you see this flowing wind with some sort of metaphor, when you attach divinity to the simplistic natural bounties of earth, so that's paganism. When you see what in our Hindu religion also, Hindu culture also, where we see so many instances of paganism, how we revere Tulsi Mata, how we refer to our nation as Bharat Mata. So paganism is attaching divinity to the regular forms that are present right in front of your eyes. Pavan Putra Hanuman. How can somebody be the sun to the wind? That's paganism. So it's another way of paying reverence to nature, when you regard nature as divine. So earlier these tribes, because they lived in close proximity with nature, they considered nature as superior. They considered nature as a life force. They considered nature as something that is immortal and that should be revered and prayed, because that is essentially giving you food to live and caves on your head. So that was the lifestyle, that was a religious belief system earlier, because during that time human beings were taken, they as a tribe, they as a species took themselves to be the part of the nature. And this is indeed the critical study of eco-criticism. When and before anthropocentrism, what was there? We considered ourselves to be the part of the nature, just as one of the species, as other species are of plants, trees and animals. We considered ourselves to be a part of this organic whole. So this is what paganism is all about, when you revere trees, when you revere nature. So before Christianity come, the religion that these tribes followed was pagan religion. कण कण में भगवान को देखना. Now after paganism, क्रिश्चियनाइजेशन स्टार्ट हुआ. कहां से स्टार्ट हुआ? आयरिश मिशनरीज ने नॉर्थम्ब्रिया को क्रिश्चियनाइज करना स्टार्ट किया. रोमन पीपल ने केंट के लोगों को क्रिश्चियनाइज करना स्टार्ट किया. एल्फर्ड द ग्रेट ने वेसेक्स रीजन को क्रिश्चियनाइज करना स्टार्ट किया. सो पैगनिज्म से कन्वर्जन हुआ क्रिश्चियनिटी पर. सो साथ साथ आइडिया ऑफ सेल्फ डेवलप हुआ. आइडिया क्रिश्चियनिटी से आइडिया क्या आया कि व्हाटसोएवर देयर इज इन फ्रंट ऑफ यू, द एनिमल्स, द ट्रीज, the clouds, the air, are to serve the humankind. Adam and Eve. Yes, divinity was attached to Jesus Christ, who will be here to sacrifice his life for the sake, for the sins of the humankind, the Adam and Eve, the sins they have committed, in order to free us from those sins, free us from those ills that we have dwelled upon ourselves. One Messiah will come, Jesus Christ will come. But when humanly godly figure came, human beings understood the dominance of the human species over the other species. Trees cannot walk, we can walk. Animals cannot speak, we can speak. So that's the development of the language, that's the development of the brain, that's the development of the basic human wisdom. I hope you people are able to follow me clearly. Please do hit like button and subscribe to this channel for more updates. So after paganism, we have seen the historical background, social and political and religious background also. And in this very video, we will also cover the language background also, how we attained the English that we people are able to speak up today, through how it emerged. So after Christianity, we have covered historical background, social background, political background, and also the religious background. And because literature essentially mirrors society, I am going to talk about the literature of Anglo-Saxon period. See, literature of Anglo-Saxon period was loaded with Latin words, Latin translations. But essentially, if we look at literature, in the case of literature, the genre that was prominent was poetry, and the themes that were prominent were historical, romance. Romance doesn't mean the man-woman romance, but romance is here related to chivalry, knighthood, battles. So, in case of literature, we primarily have three subsections. First is poetry. I have not mentioned anything here because in other pages I have talked about complete poetry. Then we have elegies and then we have prose. So these are the three main subsections in which the literature of the Anglo-Saxon period is preserved. Again, I need to tell you this thing, that before these works were got known, these works were known as came to be known as the extant works. They were transferred orally. If the work is known, the writer is anonymous. If the writer is known, the works written by him, when and where and in which year that was published, is all conjectured. So in the case of NTA UGC NET examination also, not much questions are asked from Anglo-Saxon period, because earlier I have said that it is very important to foreground the study. So that's what I'm trying to do with this video. You just make notes for this section, revise it once or twice, but keep more focus on learning the trajectory of growth of English literature. So let us talk about, first of all, I would like to highlight the Anglo-Saxon poetry. See, Anglo-Saxon poetry is a mix. Earlier Anglo-Saxon poetry is the mix of the pagan element and the Christian element. All the works, they were essentially written by old Germanic tribes. So sort of paganism, blend of paganism and blend of Christianity could be clearly seen. And the complete Anglo-Saxon poetry is divided across 4 manuscripts. Manuscripts that were found after century or 2 before they were written or created or composed. So we have the Anglo-Saxon poetry. First manuscript is the Beowulf. Beowulf is the first main known epical work, heroic work of the English literature. First epic poem of English literature has to be Beowulf, and that's an old Germanic epic wherein the hero of the story, Beowulf, kills 2 monsters, dragons, and in return he is mortally wounded by the third one. But because he is the king of Geats, the work is a blend of Christian and pagan element, and the work is an old Germanic epic. It's a story of the hero warrior Beowulf who wins over the monsters, who frees Hrothgar from two of the monsters. But the first epic quality that it has is of length. Second, of the epical quality that it has of the content that it is talking about, a hero like quality. Beowulf, when his funeral pyre is ready, it is being described in such a manner that the king of Geats, the funeral pyre is ready, and the way it is described is epical. So the content and the treatment of the matter is epical. We see heroism, we see chivalry, and we see epical length. That makes it the first hand epic poem of English literature. In the first, because the first manuscript is the Beowulf manuscript, herein we have Beowulf and Judith, and second manuscript is the Junius manuscript where we have Cademonian poems. He is the known poet of Old English poetry who is renowned for the hymns that he wrote. Cademonians hymns. He used to write hymns. What are hymns? Hymns are the religious poems written in praise of God. Third, we have the two poems by Cynewulf. Cynewulf is known because when he wrote his poem, he literally signed it. So far we have seen in Anglo-Saxon poetry, there is this Beowulf and another poet Kedemon and another poet Cynewulf. Beowulf is the name of the work. It's the name of the manuscript. But who has written it? That is not known. But yes, there are translation available, even modern day translations. The question is asked on a modern day translation, that who carried out the modern day translation of the first epical poem, that is Beowulf. So Kedemon is poet, Cynewulf is poet, and Beowulf is the name of the work. And fourth is the Vercelli book, in which we have other poems written by Cynewulf, that is Andreas and the Dream of the Rood. And that's a PYQ. What is the meaning of the word rood? It means cross. The dream of cross means Christianity. So dream of the rood. Now let us look at some of the major pointers of Beowulf, because this series is exclusively for December examination. I tell you, I am going to touch upon all the important aspects, but yes, there is always scope to read more, but do not devote more than one day on completing your Anglo-Saxon literature, because that's what it demands, because not much questions are asked from it. You can definitely rely on our YouTube video for having the complete knowledge of the Anglo-Saxon period. Then we have Beowulf. Beowulf is the king of Geats. He is the son of Eithgeo. He sails to Denmark, and in order to help the king of Denmark, that is Hrothgar, and because Hrothgar was being troubled by two monsters, one sun monster, one mother monster. So he literally calls Hrothgar, King Hrothgar calls Beowulf from Geats to sail to Denmark, and in order to free himself from the monster Grendel. Beowulf becomes the epical hero, the heroic hero of the poem, because he kills Grendel, and Grendel's mother, Grendel is the name of a dragon, it's the name of a monster. In order to avenge the death of her son, the mother of the monster comes, but she also is killed by Beowulf. And now after that he becomes a very well-known personality. He rules for years, and after that once more time he has to face one dragon. See, I tell you, in Anglo-Saxon poetry, you will see why this poetry seems connected, because the allusions of the dragons, the old English mythology, everything could be seen in one poem, Beowulf. And all these things, all these mythologies, all these stories, tales, fables, they were repeated by many other poets also of that age only. That is why we can say that this is the Anglo-Saxon poet and this also is the Anglo-Saxon poet, because we see the mythology, we see the blend of the pagan and Christian element. And there is one more poet of the sort of romantic age, particularly for that matter, who has written about pagan gods. Who is that? Who has revered paganism, who looks forward to paganism. Paganism, when you worship everything and you see attached divinity to everything. Comment below who is the poet I'm talking about, who has mentioned pagan gods in the poem, in his poem. It's a very famous poem written by a very famous poet. Yes, of course, after Judith, Beowulf, Cynewulf, Cademon, there are other poems in the Anglo-Saxon poetry also. First is Widsith, the far traveler, because during that time, traveling, sailing, adventures, these were the main themes. So, Widsith, the far traveler, Walder, the fight, because battles, adventures, heroism, chivalry, these were the themes that were prevalent, and also historicity, looking at the historical past, looking at writing the historical chronicles. So this was a trend in the Anglo-Saxon literature. So whatsoever I have taught you in this video, I tell you, this is far more than enough for you to know about the Anglo-Saxon poetry, Anglo-Saxon literature. The fight at Finnsburg, the Battle of Burnaby, the Battle of Maldon. That's all about the poems of Anglo-Saxon literature. Now let us quickly jump up to the elegies. Elegies are but poems written at the death in order to commemorate to the person who is dead. So elegies are basically the sad poems written on the theme of death, written on the theme of sadness. So elegies were also prevalent as a genre during that time. Today we know them as elegy, but earlier they were not headed as elegy, but that followed the trend. That was a trend to write to write the poetry of lamentation. So elegies are the wanderer, the seafarer, Dior's lament. Dior's lament specifically here I would like to mention is it's not an elegy. It's a poem of lamentation, but on a more positive side. He is not lamenting. Dior is just lamenting that if so and so has overcome his fear, why cannot? Why can I not? He has been replaced as a scope from by somebody else, and he is lamenting, but he is optimistic at the same time that if that person has overcome his fear, why can I not? Wives' laments and husband's message. Now let us conclude our discussion of the Anglo-Saxon literature with the prose. Yes, prose was also there during that time, because prose is essentially the language of conversation. The way I'm conversing with you, it's not poetical, it's prosaic, but homiletic prose was there. So who started this prose? Prose was started, yes, poetry as a genre, as a form of literature, as a form of composition, as a form of creativity was earlier there, but prose was more there for the sake of purpose. King Alfred, the king of Wessex, the beloved king, the darling king, he felt that English learning was declining. English people were not that learned, and in order to re-energize that, in order to re-emphasize on the learning of English people, he translated some well-known books into English language. Books like Pastoral Care of Pope Gregory, Ecclesiastical History, very important work, Bede's History of the World, Orosius. So King Alfred was the king. He was very much fascinated with the idea of education, and with the idea of education he saw the means of translation, and he translated the famous works of during that time in the prose language. So this king is known as the father of English prose. Who else are the well-known personality of English prose? Do let me know in the comment section below, because we are preparing in such a way that we are trying to build a connect and then learn. So besides King Alfred, who is the father of English prose? Comment below. Father of modern English prose, who is known as the father. And King Alfred has been asked in chronology also. So you need to know this England's darling, this earlier father of English prose belonged to the Anglo-Saxon era. So after Alfred, we have Elfric, who wrote Catholic homilies, lives of the saints, and at last we have prose writer Wulfstan. Alfred, Elfric, Wulfstan. He. So, because I told you that in this very video only I am going to trace down the development of English language. See my dear students, in English literature, in English language also, the upper class who knew Latin borrowed many Latin words from the Latin works and people of knowledge with Latin language. So in four main dialects were there in English Isle. What did I say? Four main dialects were there in the present in the English Isle. Dialect is not a language, but dialect is something lesser, something small, something of shorter level than language. Like in Haryana, our language is Hindi, but our boli is Haryanvi. So first is a Northumbrian dialect, Mercian dialect, Kentish dialect and West Saxon dialect. Earlier literature was written in Northumbrian. Mercian was the dialect that developed from sort of East Midland dialect. Kentish dialect was southeast dialect, southeast part of England, and West Saxon language was after King Alfred became the standard English language. So far there were four main types of English language, English dialect that was spoken in the English Isle. First is the Northumbrian, second is the Mercian, third is the Kentish, and fourth is the West Saxon. It is taken to be the standard English because of King Alfred. King Alfred wrote his prose in West Saxon dialect, but Geoffrey Chaucer, who is known as the father of English language, who is known as the father of English literature, wrote in which dialect? Dialects, they keep on changing as per their prominence, because King Alfred favored this West Saxon dialect. That is why the prose was written in West Saxon dialect. Earlier literature was written in Northumbrian dialect, but Geoffrey Chaucer, our upcoming father of English poetry, upcoming father of English literature, the future of English is going to be from which dialect? Comment section below. This is how we are going to study in our WinNet series. अगर आपको अच्छा लगा है less than 40 minutes में इस topic को cover कर what all Neha ma'am is asking for, like, share and your few words of encouragement. Do answer your comments below, because that will really keep you going and keep giving me the message that yes, you people are learning from me. Thank you so much. Wait for the second part, that's the Middle English period part, and by we'll touch upon all the main topics. Thank you.